Okay, so far in this series, what we've done is we've created two prefabs, and they are randomly spawned in random positions along the right side of the screen, and then over time, their velocity increases as they travel from the right to the left. And right now, they travel in a straight line. So what if what we want to do is create a little more variance? Rather than having everything traveling in a straight line, what if the ones along the top veer downwards and the ones along the bottom veer up? Now it's doable, but that means we need to know the position of at least the y-coordinate. We need to know the y-coordinate of the object to determine are we adding a positive y velocity or a negative y velocity? Because if it's traveling along the top, we don't want it to shoot off the top. And if we have it travel along the bottom, we don't want it to shoot off the bottom. We want to have it go towards the center. And the second part we can do is we can randomly decide whether or not that actually happens. Because if everything up here shoots towards the middle, well, then you know that up here is kind of a safe zone. Likewise, if everything here is shooting up, then you know this is kind of a safe zone. So what we have to do is only sometimes do they do that. So this really isn't any kind of complex choreography, but at least we're adding a little more variance into what's happening. So how do we do that? We're going to look at our bcon script, and we're going to create a couple more variables. Those variables are going to, as I said, capture the y-coordinate, and then the other variable is going to store the predetermined velocity for y. So in other words, is it going to be a negative velocity moving it down, or is it going to be a positive number moving it up? So private, because we don't need this to be changed in the inspector. So private, and we're going to make this a vector 2. So just as we've declared other type of variables, we're going to say that this is going to have an x and a y coordinate, and we'll call this current POS. Now, just to be clear, just because you've said it's a vector 2 and that it's the current POS, you haven't actually assigned anything to it. You've assigned a type of variable, okay? So you're saying current POS is going to have an x and a y, but you haven't actually assigned anything to this variable yet. Private. And this one will be y_vel because we need to store the y velocity. Oops, sorry, I did it again. I forgot to put in the type. Sorry. So private int y_vel. And we'll set it to 0 to begin with. So my apologies about that. It's the same format. It's private, then the type of variable, and then the name. And then if you want to, you can give it a default value. So now let's look at how it flows at the moment. So at the moment, it has a 0 y velocity, so it's not moving up or down. And then after 1 second, it changes. And then it holds that for another second and then changes again. But that is at least the x velocity is changing. The y is not. So it's your choice where you want to put it. I'm going to have the first two start at 0, and then I'm only going to have this one be y_vel. So we haven't actually done anything with y_vel, but let's go ahead and put that into place now. So it spawns without any y velocity. After 1 second, it still doesn't have any y velocity, and then after 1 more second, it's going to get y_vel. Now we just have to decide what that y velocity is going to be. So let's grab in the start section let's look at the y portion, the y coordinate of current position. So how do we do that? The if statement. If current POS dot y. So since it's a vector 2, we can extract just the y. If it's greater than 3, then we want something to happen. So if the y position is greater than 3, then we want y_vel to be equal. So that means it's towards the top of the screen, so we'll give that negative, so it's traveling along, so it starts heading towards the bottom of the screen. And now, as I like to say, it's just rinse and repeat. We just have to check a couple more possibilities. If it's equals, equals. Again, if you're doing less than, greater than, you only need one sign. It's only if you're doing equals that you need two signs. And I'm pretty sure the reason why is because Unity gets confused. If you say it's equal, it thinks you're trying to set this to this, and you're not. You're trying to check to see if this is equal to that. So if current position is equal to 3, then y velocity we said is going to be 0. And then we'll just grab this one more. And we said that if it is less than 3, then this needs to be a positive 2. Okay, so now here's the problem. As I mentioned, so we're looking to see what the y coordinate is. We haven't actually assigned it though yet. We declared what kind of value is stored. We haven't actually given it a value. So in the start section, current POS is equal to transform dot position. So transform dot position, it's taking the position of the object the script is attached to. So current position is equal to the position of the object this script is attached to, and then we only look at the y coordinate of that variable. If it's equal to 3, this variable gets set to -2. If it's if it's greater than 3, if it's equal to 3, it's set to 0 because it'll stay straight, and if it's less than 3, then it'll be set to a +2, moving up along the top of the screen. So let's go ahead and save that. Now we run it. So he should move up, and there we go. One's in the middle. Well, it's not quite middle. The camera isn't centered, but the ones towards the center are not moving, and that was by design. Now, even a not so avid gamer would probably pick up on the pattern pretty quickly because, like I said, you run the risk of making safe zones where things are not ever colliding. So right now it looks like the bottom is not a safe zone, but it looks like that we probably do have a dead zone up there in the upper right. Oh, no, actually he comes pretty close, so that's not bad at all. So you may still want to determine that you don't always want them to do that to add even more variety. So still not really complex choreography, but again, more variance. So what do? Well, we go back to our bcon script, and we're just going to use yet another random.range to determine whether or not this gets done. So what are we going to do? Private, and let's make it int, and it will be, let's call it rand change, as in like it's a random change, specifically velocity, and we'll set it to 0. So what we're going to do is, in addition to grabbing the position, we're also now going to do a random range to this number to determine if this actually happens. So random change is equal to random.range, and we're going to do 0, 2. And again, it's actually only going to give us 0 or 1. So what we're going to do is, rather than looking at this value and do an if, what we're actually going to do is we're going to do a calculation with this instead. So if this is the point, we generated a random number and they said, okay, based on the number, let's do something. We're just actually going to put that right in here. So y velocity is going to be equal to this. So -2 times random change. And I'm going to do this for all three, and then I'll walk through the math. It's actually, we don't have to do that one. Okay. Because this is the one we said will always be staying in the middle. Okay. So all I did was add the asterisk, so multiplication, and the variable name random change. Why? Because what this does is it still does a check, and it says y velocity is going to be equal to -2 times this. So if it comes out to 0, what's -2 times 0? 0. You've now turned this back into a 0 y velocity. If it comes out to 1, -2 times 1, well, that brings us back to -2. So really, sometimes you can make a decision without even having to put in an if statement. The if statement is already there, so why put in another set of if statements? Just modify it by the random range. So what should happen is now sometimes 0 will be generated, and y_val here will be 0. Sometimes 0 will be here, and y_val will be 0. And then sometimes it will be 1. And like I said, that should never, ever be 2. And actually, in this case, 2 isn't bad because then it would be even faster and add even more variance. So actually, you could set this to be 3 or 4 or 5 to try to get even more randomization, but I think that's good enough. So let's see. So he should stay in the middle. He moved down. 2 on the bottom. See, 1 moved up, the other one didn't, so it looks like it's working. 1 moved down, the other one did not move down. That one moved down. That one moved up, the next one did not. So, yeah, we're actually doing really good. No glitches, no mistakes. It's working as intended. So now you have a little bit more complexity to the game as far as the wave, that they're not just moving right to left. Sometimes they break up or down, and sometimes they do not. So again, it's not complex choreography, and it's also not looking at the player position because there is no player. We haven't added a player character, so it's not looking at player position. So this is really rudimentary, basic. Wouldn't really call you really can't call it AI. It's not even close to AI. It's just resolving positions. So, but it's not looking at where the player is since there is no player, but it is giving some variance. So I think that should do it for this video. And as I said, I hope you continue to find this useful. At the moment, I think that's everything that I had wanted to do with this. But again, if you want to see more, please leave a like, please leave a comment, and just say what you'd like to see done with this. As I mentioned in the first video, the reason why I did this series is because someone expressly said, can you do this? Can you show me how to do this? So if there's something else you'd like to see with this enemy wave spawning, just let me know.